Alrighty, so today we're going to do the season preview of DC United and also do the season preview of last year Wooden Spoon winner. I know, unfortunately, I got to throw that in there because, yeah, it's safe to say that last season was just an absolute disaster for DC. And it's been kind of like this for almost half a decade now. After the Chicago Fire just broke the longest active playoff drought, DC United, unfortunately, now has the infamous mark of having the longest playoff draw of any MLS team right now, and it doesn't seem like that's going to end relatively soon because it is pretty clear that this team is going through a deep rebuild. And there's also no doubt that this team made a lot of changes this offseason, and they had to because, if they didn't make any changes to this team, yeah, I'm pretty sure the fans are going to be right in front of the DC front office and openly protest and maybe even riot at it in terms of the way that it feels like this team has clearly lost its identity from those glory days that we seen when they were considered to be the original dynasty of MLS, winning those free MLS Cup in fourth season to begin the league history, and now it just feels like it's a painful rebuild to try to get themselves back into that stage. Now, last season, like I said, it was a disastrous season. 5-11-18 was the record, only finished with 26 points, which was good enough for them to win the wooden spoon. And obviously, they did not make it to the playoffs. In fact, like I said, it's been a while since this team have made it to the playoffs. 2019 was the last time they make it to the playoffs, and it was not a memorable playoff appearance in 2019. I think that was the year when they lost 5-1 to TFC, and that was a game where they had a late goal that they score to force extra time, only to kind of delay the inevitable and do the undubious honor of conceding 4 goals in extra time, which is probably the most goal I have seen a team concede in extra time, not only in MLS, but really, I don't recall I ever watch a game where I see a team goes to extra time anywhere in the world and they would concede 4 during that spell. And of course, their last MLS Cup was 2004. It's been a long time since this team has been successful. This team, just like the Chicago Fire, used to be considered to be a very successful team, and I would also say even more successful than the Chicago Fire because, like I said, they were the original dynasty. This was a team that was a powerhouse when the league first started winning those 3 of the 4 MLS Cup in the four season, and then they followed that by winning another one in 2004. And like I said, it just feels like it's almost ancient history since that has happened compared to the state of this team that has just completely looked like a shell of its old self of what once was supposed to be the powerhouse of MLS. Now, looking at the last 5 seasons for this team, it's been pretty ugly. 5-11-18, as I mentioned, in 2025 with 25 points. Obviously, did not make it to the playoffs. In 2024, they finished 10-10-14, finished with 40 points. Also didn't make the playoffs. It was pretty much the same record and the same point total in 2023. 10-10-14, 40 points. Didn't make it to the playoffs. 2022 got even worse. In fact, if it wasn't for 2025, this would have been one of the worst seasons in DC United franchise history. 7-6-21 with 27 points. So if there's one thing I would say maybe you could argue 2022 was worse because they've lost way more games, and they have the undubious honor of being one of the rare teams to lose 20 plus games in a single MLS campaign, and obviously did not make it to the playoffs. And then 2021 was probably the closest that they came out of all these years, and really ever since they made it to the playoffs back in 2019. Of making it as well. 14-5-15, finished with 47 points. That was the year where they did everything right in terms of winning their final game of the season to set themselves up to potentially make it to the playoffs, but they just didn't get the help that they needed, and as a result, they miss out on the playoffs on a very final day, with just despite the fact that they scored 47 points. Which, if you ask me, if nowadays if you get 47 points, you would have definitely had a chance to make it to the playoffs. Even though I know last season they probably wouldn't have made it to the playoffs as well because the benchmark in terms of making the playoffs last season was really high in the East. But in normal years, because of the extra 2 playoff spot, there's no doubt DC would have made it compared to what we see in 2021. And in fact, if we had the current format, DC would have made it back in 2021. They would have made it as the eight seed, as that's where they finished in 2021. Now, looking at some of the transfer that they made, there's a lot of names we have to go over. And again, it's not a surprise because it's clearly a team that needs a squad overhaul. And yep, they definitely did a squad overhaul this offseason. Start by talking about the ins. So obviously they made a record transfer deal by signing Romanian number 9 Luis Montanu. Now, for the amount that they of course pay, I've already said this before. I am very skeptical in terms of the amount that they of course pay, and I've even said that I feel like it's a bit of an overpay for them for a guy that yes he did very well in Romania. He was I believe the top goals scored in that league. But this is in the Romanian league, which again, I don't know if the quality of the Romanian league is just as good as MLS, maybe a tier below that as well. But the other big signing that they did is bring in Ty Baribo from the Philadelphia Union. This one was a big surprise because I thought the Union was going to keep Baribo. I mean, I know I talked about the Union before, kind of dismantling their old core as part of their transitional period, but I didn't think that Baribo was going to be one of the casual team in terms of that. But now he's going to go to DC United. They spent a lot to get him as well, $4 million in terms of the player trade. They also signed a Japanese left back Kusuke Karakawa, and then they brought in Sean Nealis from the New York Red Bulls. Still on Hefty, Alex Bono, and Sean Johnson. So they brought in two new goalkeeper as well. It's interesting for Sean Johnson the fact that he was part of that deep rebuild with TFC, and now he's part of another deep rebuild with DC United. I mean, I kind of feel bad for him because he's done really well with TFC. I thought he would maybe got a chance to see that team fry, but nope. Instead, now he's thrown right back into another deep rebuilding kind of team, and probably a team that he's gonna have to stand on his heads, just like what he did doing his time with Toronto FC, because he basically will have no defense in front of him. I mean, I will say at least a good thing for Sean Johnson, despite the fact that he is playing some bad team in these last couple of years. At least he won an MLS Cup with NYCFC, and he definitely made a couple of appearances with the U.S. men's national team as well. So he'll definitely take that, even if the payment is now that he's playing with some garbage teams that is clearly in a deep rebuilding process. They also got Gabe Siegel from the Houston Dynamo, and then of course for the number one super draft pick, they picked up Nikola Markovic, which we'll see whether or not if he's going to be a day one starter as well. I remember last year in the number one pick when San Diego picked up a center back as well in Manu Dua, he was a day one starter as well, and he turns out to look very good for San Diego as well. So good that he actually scored his first professional goal in a crucial moment against Pumas in the CONCACAF Champions Cup not long ago. So they're hoping that might be the same case with Nikola Markovic. And then they also got the other draft pick player in Richard Amon. Now looking at the players that's no longer on this team, some notable name from the disaster squad that we saw last season. So Christian Benteke, of course, no longer on this team. The big man is now cashing his last paycheck in Saudi Arabia, as we usually see with a lot of players that is kind of heading to the sunset of their career. They also lost David Schlegel, who I believe he is. Oh God, I couldn't quite remember which team he is, but he joined another MLS team. That is Boris Enau, Randall Leal, Christian Fletcher, who of course again, that's another player that I forgot which team he joined. I think it's Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken. That he joined. Luis Barraza, who is part of one of those players that got the lucky sweepstake of able to play with Inter Miami, despite the fact that you probably have no impact with that team whatsoever. Kim Jong Un, who decided to go back to his native country in South Korea on loan, and then Lucas McNulton, Reed Zohan, and Derek Dodson, all those players no longer on this team are still currently a free agent right now in the free agency market. Now, looking at the first 5 games for DC United, yeah, it's that team, the Philadelphia Union. So yeah, that is not a great way to have your first game of the season when you're basically playing a team that has kind of put belt to ass on you for the last couple of meeting. But after that, they do go on the road to play against Austin FC, but then they return home. And I say home, it's technically not a home game for them because they're actually decided to follow the footstep of the Columbus Crew like they did last season, moving the game to a bigger stadium, and they're going to be playing against Miami in Baltimore, which I'm pretty sure 80% of that crowd is going to be there just to see Messi and friends, so forth. Then they go on the road again to face against the Chicago Fire before go on the road again to face against Atlanta United. So in theory, they actually only have one home game out of their first 5 games because again the one against Miami, it's not really a home game. They moved the game to Baltimore, and it's pretty clear what the ownership wants to do. They don't really care about the fans. They just want to cash out on the Miami sweepstakes. So yeah, very home or very road heavy start to the season. That obviously doesn't help for a team that a lot of people are predicting to be once again finish near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But look at the last five games. They go on the road to face against Orlando City before playing at home against Cincinnati. Then they go on the road to face against Toronto, and then they go on the road to face against Columbus. And for their final game of the season, they face against NYCFC. So not a great stretch to finish the schedule as well. Very tough stretch to finish the schedule, but it's pretty obvious that by then this team probably would be out of the playoffs. I'll be very surprised if this team was still be in contention up to this point because, like I said, it is pretty clear that this team is in year one of what hope to be a successful deep rebuild that they've been trying to do for the last couple of years, but it fails every single time. It feels like this is the rebuild of the rebuild of the rebuild of the last rebuild. That is. Now look at the strength of this team. So this was hard because there's really not much strength in this team. I guess maybe the number 9 position with question mark because Ty Baribo is a pretty big name. He did very well during his time with the Union, albeit if you ignore in terms of his numbers in the second half of the season, he was very productive with the Union. And then of course with their big signing Luis Montano, they hope that he is going to be a guy that live up to the DP money and especially the goal scoring tally that he did in the Romanian league and maybe transfer that into MLS as well. But besides that, the weakness of this team is pretty much everything. I mean, when you look at this squad, it is a bottom tier squad. Even with some of the new signing that they have, it is nowhere near to be a playoff contender in my opinion. And obviously, the defense is definitely going to be a spot that I will highlight as the biggest weakness of this team. I mean, last season I mentioned that they pretty much have no defense. This year, they kind of did try to fix the defense. I don't know if bringing Sean Nealis might be a great addition to this team. I mean, he was okay doing his time with the Red Bulls, but it was pretty clear that he has lost a step or two. So they're hoping maybe that might not be the case, and maybe he'll bring some veteran presence to this back line. And then, of course, getting Kazuki Karakawa, a Japanese player that has some pretty good upside. Maybe that will help in terms of the fullback position as well. But honestly, it's gonna be a team that will definitely be conceding a lot of goals. And again, for Sean Johnson, I feel bad for him because again, he came from a team that basically have no defense to another team that now basically have no defense, and he's probably gonna have to bail out this team many times throughout the season, which is something he has definitely shown during his time with Toronto FC, especially in the last 2 seasons. So the free big question of this team, in fact, there's a lot of question with this team. So obviously, I'm gonna go straight in terms of the biggest question of this team is the fact that will they actually get a DP10 or will they actually get a playmaker on this team? So as much as I know they definitely upgrade their number 9 spot by bringing Baribo and Montano, and I'm pretty sure Rene Valor might go with a 2 striker system coming in to this season. But one of the things that I am a little concerned, even with bringing those high profile kind of player, who's going to give him the ball? Like, who is going to be the guy that will play the final ball to him? In many ways, I feel like in terms of the signings that DC has made this season, it's very similar to what we saw with Austin last season. Remember last year when Austin decided to bring in Brandon Vasquez and Murto Azuni, and the fact that they thought that that might be a solution in terms of fixing the number 9 position and maybe get the goal scoring. And oh yeah, that team finished as the worst goal scoring team in the Western Conference and one of the worst goal scoring team in general in the league. So yeah, that feels very similar to that. And what was the biggest problem of why Austin couldn't really get the best out of their number 9? They had no playmaker on that team. And this is the same thing. Again, it doesn't really matter if you get a high profile number 9 as long as you don't have a playmaker, or if a number 9 doesn't create his own chances. This is where I think the goals could be hard to come by with this team. I mean, when you look at this team, their best playmaker in this team is maybe Caden Clark, and that is if you have a renaissance season. Now he's on his third club after kind of having a little bit of that during his time with Montreal, but really kind of fell apart. And then after that, you have Gabriel Priani. Yeah, Priani is definitely not a guy you want to have, especially of how much underperformed he's been been doing ever since joining this team. So because of the way that there's no playmaker in this team, how are they going to give the ball to Baribo and Montano, those guys that I don't think are considered to be guys that could be a chance creator, unless of course you decide to ask one of them to do so. And I think Austin in some way kind of did that a little bit last season, and it just did not work out whatsoever with this team. And then the second big question is the new imports. How much impact will these new signings will make to improve this team? I think that they will at least make some impact. I mean, I can't see the fact that they absolutely bomb in terms of some of the signing, though knowing DC luck in terms of recent history, I wouldn't be surprised that might be the case. But there's no doubt that the new signings that they made, it should definitely make an impact to this team in terms of the fact that they can't get any worse than they did last season, can they? I mean, as the old saying goes, when you finish dead last in the season, there's nowhere but up for this team heading into this year. And that's where their big question of this team is the fact that can they actually show some progress in terms of year one version what seems like 4.0 in terms of the deep rebuild that they're going through, because yeah, that's kind of the most important thing when it comes to a deep rebuild. You want to show some progress, and maybe it might be slow in the beginning of the year as well, because one of the things when you decide to gut the team and decide to put in almost a new team, it's going to take a while for the chemistry to be there. In some way you could say DC is kind of like an expansion team this season with some of the new signings that they have. And as I mentioned, with the way that they have a pretty rough schedule to start the season, and with them being on the road for majority of the beginning of the season, won't be surprised if this team maybe basement dweller in the beginning. But it's all about whether or not if they can get out of that. We kind of saw it with Toronto FC last season, where it kind of struggled in the beginning of the year, but it got better as the season goes along, and that's where we saw the real progress. And I think one of the reason why they show progress is the fact that they started to become pragmatic. I won't be surprised if Renee Weller might be going with a very pragmatic approach. I know DC fans don't want to see that, because every DC fans will say that, well, it looks like we're watching Ben Olsen ball. It looks like we're watching Benny ball all over again. Well, at the end of the day, I think with the way that this roster is being put right now, I think DC fans would rather watch Benny ball and have this team kind of gradually improve than just being a team that tried to attack but just have no quality whatsoever, and the defense that is pretty much Swiss cheese and give up 70 plus goals and once again finish where they were like last season of potentially winning the wooden spoon for the second consecutive year and be a basement dweller in the East again. So look at the high of this team. I'm going to say 11th. Obviously, this is one of the rare teams where I actually did not put them in terms of being in the playoffs as a high. In fact, this maybe be the only team I'll talk about. Although I think there's also one other team that I might actually put high not above the playoff line, because when you look at this roster, even with the changes that they're nowhere near in terms of ready to compete. The low for them is obviously dead last. Again, I can definitely see this team finish dead last, especially with the way that if the signings that they made did not make it a big impact, if they once again regress like they have done for the past couple of years, wouldn't be surprised it would be a dead last finish again, and the cycle begins again for this team. It's basically going for a rebuild, trying to make some changes, hope that this time, of course, will be the right move, and then yeah, you get the cycle. There's a reason why DC fans are getting very frustrated, not just about the squad in general, but also just to the front office as well. It just feels like nothing they have done in the last couple of years has worked. They're stuck in this. It's not even a mediocrity hell. This is literally a hellish kind of landscape of whatever they try to do, no matter what kind of signings and big names that they brought, they just cannot get out of this hellhole that they kind of dig themselves in. Obviously, some of course is self-inflicted, and then some of them, of course, is due to the terrible front office and the ownership that this team has really endured. And can you imagine? I say that about 15 or 20 years ago, that this is the fate that DC United has had. It's really sad to see, of course, that is the case. And I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon, unless if they do what Chicago did, which is finally maybe find a new ownership and maybe find the right coach on this team, and actually did a proper rebuild and finally get out of the endless cycle of curse that this team seems to be in during the last couple of years. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. All about DC United in the season preview. I know it sounds like a very grim kind of season preview to talk about DC's future, but I mean, if you're a DC fan, I don't think it's on It's unexpected. I mean, I don't think a lot of DC fans have any hope of this season whatsoever. But if you're a DC fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, the free big question, and what's your prediction of this team heading into this season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.